welcome back to Spinning Iris. It is day 3 of Banned Book Month, which means it is time for Chapter 3 of Candide by Voltaire. Now, Chapter 3 does have some description of battle, just as a warning. If you are uncomfortable with those sorts of things, especially the very uncomfortable aftermath of war, the effects, if you will, of war, and especially the toll it takes on civilians, people who aren't actually fighting, then feel free to skip ahead. I'll look up briefly when we get there. But other than that, this is going to be an interesting chapter. All right, here we go. Chapter 3. How Candide escaped from the Bulgars and what happened to him. Nothing could have been more splendid, brilliant, smart, or orderly than the two armies. The trumpets, fifes, oboes, drums, and cannons produced a harmony whose equal was never heard in hell. First, the cannons laid low about 6,000 men on each side. Then rifle fire removed from the best of worlds about 9,000 or 10,000 scoundrels who had been infesting its surface. The bayonet was also the sufficient reason for the death of several thousand men. The total may well have risen to 30,000 souls. Candide, trembling like a philosopher, hid himself as best he could during this heroic carnage. Finally, while the two kings were having Te Deum sung, each in his own camp, Candide decided to go elsewhere to reason about cause and effect. He made his way over heaps of dead and dying men until he came to a nearby village. It was in ashes, for it was an Avar village which the Bulgars had burned in accordance with international law. Right. Feel free to skip ahead if you are uncomfortable. Let's continue. Old men with wounds all over their bodies were watching the death throes of butchered women who clutched their children to their bloody breasts. Girls who had been disemboweled after satisfying the natural needs of several heroes were breathing their last sighs. Others, mortally burned, were shrieking for someone to hasten their deaths. The ground was strewn with brains and severed arms and legs. Candide fled to another village as fast as he could. It belonged to the Bulgars, and the Avar heroes had treated it in the same manner. Still walking over quivering limbs or through ruins, he finally emerged from the theatre of war, carrying a little food in his sack and never forgetting Lady Cunegonde. His food ran out when he reached Holland, but since he had heard that everyone was rich in that country and that the people were Christians, he did not doubt that he would be treated as well there as he had been in the Baron's castle before he had been driven away from it because of Lady Cunegonde's lovely eyes. He asked alms of several solemn individuals who all replied that if he continued to ply that trade he would be shut up in a house of correction to teach him better manners. Next he approached a man who had just spoken about charity for a whole hour in front of a large assembly. The orator scowled at him and said, "What are you doing here? Are you for the good cause?" "There is no effect without a cause," replied Candide modestly. "All things are necessarily connected and arranged for the best. I had to be driven away from Lady Cunegonde, I had to run the gauntlet, and I have to beg my bread until I can earn it. All that could not have been otherwise." "My friend," said the orator, "do you believe that the Pope is the Antichrist?" "I've never heard anyone say so," answered Candide, "but whether he is or not, I still have nothing to eat." "You don't deserve to eat," said the orator. "Go, you scoundrel, you wretch, and never come near me again." The orator's wife, having looked out the window and seen a man who doubted that the Pope was the Antichrist, poured on his head the contents of a full ... "O heaven, to what excesses are ladies driven by religious zeal!" A man who had not been baptized, a good Anabaptist by the name of James, witnessed this cruel and ignominious treatment of one of his fellow men, a featherless biped who had a soul. He took him to his home, washed him, served him bread and beer, made him a gift of 2 florins, and even offered to teach him to work for him in the manufacture of those Persian fabrics that are produced in Holland. Candide almost threw himself at his feet. "Dr. Pangloss was right when he told me that all is for the best in this world," he said, "because your extreme generosity has moved me much more deeply than the harshness of that gentleman in the black cloak and his wife." The next day, as he was taking a walk, he met a beggar covered with sores. His eyes were lifeless, the tip of his nose had been eaten away, his mouth was twisted, his teeth were black, his voice was hoarse, he was racked by a violent cough, and he spat out a tooth with every spasm. And that's the end of chapter 3. Quite a cliffhanger. Bet you'll never guess who it is. But we'll find out tomorrow. Hopefully it won't be too disgusting. So, see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.